I'm going to go through what I learned about myself the 3 times I did the Authenblissity Reset in the area of media. And for this video, I thought I would read you the sentence that I wrote down in the looking up exercise, which basically asks you to envision future you and all of the hopes and dreams you have for yourself within this topic of media. So with my first media reset, which I did in March of 2021, the sentence that represented my hopes and dreams for myself in the area of media was this: I see myself as someone who is open-minded, flexible, and adaptive about media. I realized during my first media reset that I had a lot of self-judgment about my media consumption. I thought I was consuming too much of it, and at that time I was on Reddit a lot, I was doom scrolling a lot, and just very obsessed with the news. I also had a lot of self-judgment about how often I was sharing on social media. I was still posting regularly on YouTube, but I felt like I wasn't posting enough and I wasn't putting enough effort into my content. And as well, I had totally dropped off from posting on Instagram, whereas I was pretty regular with it before and I was in a very good groove with it. It was actually bringing me a lot of joy, but then all of a sudden I just didn't feel like posting anymore. This was around the time that we said goodbye to our rabbit, so I think I was in a grieving process as well. So at this time, my evenings were spent scrolling through Reddit and not really wanting to post on Instagram, which is totally okay for this part of my life. But my inner critic kept telling me that I should stop consuming so much media and instead I should go back to sharing more on social media. So I had a lot of internal dialogue that was not allowing me to just relax. That was the first time I realized I had so much negative self-talk and self-judgment in the area of media, and I really worked on trying to let all of this go. I also wanted to have self-compassion because a part of me did know that I was going through a grieving process. At that time in my life, all I really wanted to do was scroll through Reddit, and it actually brought me a lot of comfort because of a lot of the subreddits that I follow. It wasn't all doom and gloom. It wasn't all doom scrolling. There are a lot of lighthearted and fun subreddits that I follow on simple living, on rabbits, cute animals, houseplants, and the like. So I really wanted to quiet my inner critic so I could actually thoroughly enjoy this time that I spent relaxing on my phone. I didn't want to feel that productivity push or the push to put myself out there to stay connected with people. I really just needed this time to retreat. And the media I was accessing was really helping me in terms of my mental health. I know we talk a lot about social media being detrimental to mental health, but in this case, at this time in my life, it really brought me a lot of comfort. The second time I did a media reset was in November of 2022, and here is the sentence that encapsulated my hopes and dreams for myself in this area. I see myself as someone who is aware when my media use is leading me away from my inner compass. This means I can be flexible, take frequent pauses, and adjust how I interact with media. I did my second media reset at a very different time in my life. I was 6 months into a no news experiment because eventually all of that scrolling and all of that keeping up with the news, it did start to go the other way. It was bringing me a lot of comfort, but because I was doing it so incessantly and for so long, I started noticing that it was becoming detrimental to my mental and emotional health, especially with all of the stuff that was going on in the world at that time, and there still is a lot of stuff. But that's the thing, there's always stuff going on in the world that's heartbreaking, and I found that it was starting to affect my mood, my personality, my overall sense of hope and optimism. So in April of 2022, I had decided to quit the news just for a week and see what happens. I did write a blog post on this, which I will link down below. I was 6 months into that experiment because I had extended that week indefinitely. And even to this day, I don't follow the news with any regularity. I definitely don't scroll through headlines. If I hear about a news item that captures my curiosity or that I want to learn more about, I will do dedicated Google searches. I'll read a few articles just to get a sense of what is going on, but it's really driven by my interest and my curiosity rather than me scrolling through headlines that are designed to make people click. Because I have a very vocal inner critic, I did have a hard time deciding to quit the news and also extending my decision to quit the news because I felt a lot of internal pressure to keep up with the news and to know what's going on in the world. And of course, I was aware that it is a huge privilege to even be able to turn off the news. I know that a lot of people don't have that luxury because they live in an area where a conflict or war is happening. So there was a lot of this guilt and shame around how fortunate I am to be able to make the decision to quit the news, but at the same time, I saw what the news was doing to my mood, my personality, and my motivation. So I knew it was something that I had to at least try. And because that experiment went so well, I extended it, and I was really making peace with that in my second media reset. I reflected on how much more productive I was because I was in a better mental state and I had more motivation. I didn't feel as helpless. I wasn't stuck in a place where I needed to self-soothe because the news was bringing me so much heartache. One really interesting thought that I had during this media reset was the interplay between rest and productivity. We often think of productivity as a way to earn our rest. We'll essentially bargain with ourselves saying, if I get this thing done, then I can rest. I'll work all day and rest in the evening. That sort of mentality of work coming before rest, because work is a way to earn your rest. So I started thinking a lot about, what if I flipped that around? What if I viewed rest as a way to earn my productivity? I know that doesn't really make a lot of intuitive sense when I say it, but I think that's because we're so wired to think of it the other way. That was a thought I started to play around with, and I think I talked about that in one of my videos. It might have been the one on how to reclaim your attention. During my third media reset, I really focused in on one very specific area where my inner critic is very vocal, and that is with books. And I described my hopes and dreams for my future self in the area of media as follows. I see myself as someone who doesn't compare myself to others when it comes to media use or consumption. I like more contemporary books, and I'm really into books in the personal growth space right now. So I don't read a lot of popular fiction per se. I have a really hard time getting into classics, and sometimes my inner critic tells me that I should try to read these books even though they don't really interest me. My inner critic is trying to protect me. She wants me to be relatable. She doesn't want me to be left out of conversations. She just wants me to be able to connect with the people around me, and one of the ways is through a shared love of similar books. I noticed a bunch of stuff relating to the way I interact with books now versus when I was young, and also all of these things that my inner critic likes to tell me I should do. And I thought of a few things that I'd like to do moving forward when it comes to how I approach reading books. I did a whole video on this, so I won't go into the specifics. This year, I'm going to unabashedly follow my interest and curiosity when it comes to the books that I read. I'm going to try to let go of feeling inadequate and also feeling FOMO, because I want to read the books that I want to read. That's the summary of what I learned about myself during my media reset. Now I'm going to go through the bullet journal pages and show you all of my spreads and talk about the specific exercises that I did. I decided to go with a theme for the bullet journal that I've used before and I love, and this is the love robot. It's also really easy to draw, which is a bonus. Once again, I found a quote out there in the wilderness. I came across it in a podcast and it really speaks to me. It represents how I feel about media. And the quote is, "Happiness is in making things rather than consuming them." And it's a quote attributed to Will Durant. Once again, for the reaction exercise, I listened to an audio clip of me reading the introduction to the media chapter. I found I very naturally gravitated toward a then versus now approach with a lot of these exercises. This didn't happen before. It was just that during this particular media reset, that was how my brain approached these exercises. So once again, these exercises are very customizable. Your take on these exercises will be very different from mine. And even over time, if you do the exercises again, you will have a different interpretation because you, of course, change as a person. So that's what I found. I've changed as a person since the last time I did the media reset. So I had a different approach to a lot of these exercises, which was really neat. Word cloud was a lot of fun because what I did was I drew a big robot and I put all of the media that I welcome into my life inside of this robot. So I guess I would be the robot in this case. What I'm letting into my life are music, making videos, books, blogs, podcasts, etc., puzzle or word games, media that inspires me, etc. I also have AI as a question mark because I've been learning more about it and playing with prompts and such, but I still don't quite know how it fits into my life and whether I would actually use it regularly. There are also a few forms of media outside of the robot, and these aren't necessarily things that I feel I need to cut out completely, but I want to be careful how much I let into my life because I find that these types of media can really affect my mindset and my emotional state. So these are things like celebrity gossip, news and reality TV, etc. One thing that was really interesting is that I was very focused on books during this media reset, whereas in the past, I haven't had that experience at all. So I also have, outside of the robot, books I don't enjoy. For the pendulum exercise, I've been really loving printing off the dualities so I don't have to write them in my bullet journal. These again are free printable worksheets that you can access on my website if you have the book. I just print off that one page, that one worksheet with the pendulum exercise, and I cut it down to size because I really only want the dualities. So I indicated where I feel I am on the dualities. There's no right or wrong. There's no good side or bad side. It's just whatever you feel in the moment. And of course, this can also change over time. And then I just wrote some observations. For the journal exercise, I jotted down what I felt was nourishing and what I felt was depleting, as well as my overall attention level. So my overall attention level was pretty consistent throughout the week of observation. I loved that I found so many things nourishing about my media routine. There were only a couple of things that might have been classified as depleting, but I really didn't have a whole lot in this area. I had to reach to find things that were depleting, which I think is a good sign because perhaps that means that I am more selective about what media I let in now. So these media resets in the past may have helped me be more diligent about the media I consume and how it makes me feel. The patterns exercise is a collection of sentence stems which I filled out based on my week of observation. What was really interesting to me is that I do still spend a lot more time, I think, consuming media versus creating, and I want to shift that a little bit. I really do love using media as a source of self-expression, especially through my YouTube videos, so I want to spend more time doing that. The explore section is where you pick 2 or 3 exercises to complete out of a list of 10. And I thought when I came into my media reset that I would do favorites and gratitude. I did end up doing favorites, and that was really fruitful for me. I listed 5 of my favorite things to read, watch, listen to, and interact with. Read was definitely the easiest list to make. I have a lot of favorite things to read, and this has changed a lot over time. So I started making more observations about the way I read and how that has changed from my childhood or my teenage years to now. A lot of interesting things that I want to try, and again, I talk about this in way more detail in my video on how I'm changing the way I read books. Overall, I noticed that I'm very selective now with forms of media that require my full attention. When I was done with the favorites exercise, I had a lot of things that I wanted to look into. It really sparked my curiosity. So instead of doing the gratitude exercise, I decided to do the curiosity exercise. And this was really interesting because I didn't think I was curious about anything within the topic of media when I first started this reset. I jotted down a bunch of things that I was curious about, and the thing that I decided to do more research on was about creative hermits. I don't really have any conclusions from this curiosity exercise or anything that is super groundbreaking, but I did feel like it's okay to be different, and it's okay that I love my solitude and my aloneness, and it's also okay that I feel like I have these qualities of a hermit, but I don't need to pack up my life and go move into the wilderness. So there was a lot of permission I found in this curiosity exercise, because I found people who are also living their truths and living in alignment with their inner compass, even though it goes against societal norms. And that gave me a lot of permission and a lot of comfort to be living a lifestyle that feels very true to me. We're moving into the connect section and memories. Again, I did a then and now split, which was super, super interesting. I won't go through all of these exercises because I've already given you the bottom line first, but I did disentangling. Once again, I put perceptions and perspectives on one page. In the first column, I listed some things that my inner critic tells me. Not all of the things, because my inner critic, again, is very vocal. Instead, I jotted down a few statements that were relevant to the way my media reset was going. In the second column, I jotted down the things that my inner best friend reminds me, and these are things that are directly correlated with what my inner critic tells me. So a short example, in perceptions, my inner critic tells me I need to read more. And then in perspectives, my inner best friend reminds me I can read when I want to. Interconnections is always a neat exercise for my brain. I really have to think about some of these interconnections to see how they show up in my life. What I realize though is that I have a pretty good relationship with media, and I think it's because I'm so selective with the media I let into my life and how I use media in general. The last section is reflect, and I did all three exercises. For pendulum redux, once again, I printed off the worksheet with this exercise. I cut it down to size because I just wanted the dualities, and then I drew the dot on the line in between the dualities representing where I think I am, and I wrote down a few notes. Looking up is the exercise with the sentence stem, I see myself as someone who. I jotted down 5 statements, and I decided to expand on one of them, and that is the one I shared with you earlier in this video. Finally, I completed the treasures exercise, which is a series of sentence stems that's intended to summarize everything that you learned about yourself. Pick out all of those nuggets that you want to remember about your journey through the media reset. The last page is a summary page that I've been including for myself because this is the 3rd time I'm going through my Authenblissity Reset, and I want to keep track of what I learned about myself the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd times. And this is the page that I talked about in great detail at the beginning of this video. Here is the contents page where I color in the clouds after I finished the chapter. So the media chapter, I did color in a light blue, signifying that I loved this chapter. I found it really fun and exciting, and I was surprised because I thought it would be a struggle for me to find insights in this chapter. Instead, I found it very dynamic, and it sparked a lot of my interest and curiosity. I also came up with a bunch of things I want to try, which is very exciting. Suffice it to say, I really enjoyed this media reset. That is going to be it for my media reset recap. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'd love to hear from you on how you use media and whether you have anything you want to experiment with in the area of media. Maybe you have some things you want to try in terms of the way you read books or the way you interact with other forms of media. I'll be back very soon with the introduction video for my creativity reset, which I'm really looking forward to. Until then, please take care and bye for now.